So this is a basic Merc Cruiser IO. Can you walk me through what we need to do to put this thing away for the winter and make sure that when we start it in the spring, nothing's frozen?
Yeah, absolutely. First things first, the simplest thing, I'm going to take the hull plug out of the boat. Mounts right under here,
Yeah.
right underneath the drive. Pull that hull plug out of there. That way, if you do get any rainwater, anything inside the boat over the winter time, whether you get a hole in a shrink wrap, whatever it is,
Yeah.
anything that gets in there comes out that.
Awesome.
Right? So you don't get anything that stays in there over the winter. It doesn't freeze any bilge pumps.
So is it a good idea to tape the plug to the steering wheel or something like that? Just
Absolutely.
in case yourself or a tech, if you're getting it done, you're not doing it yourself, you've got a marina doing it, that at least you know where the hull plug is. You're not searching around in the spring to...
For sure.
Yeah. So I was going to say, you got a set of muffs on that, but I'm assuming you're not running water through this engine.
No, typically we would use antifreeze through there, but there are several different ways to do that. At this point, being a new boat like this, we would mix up a solution of, say, 2-stroke oil and fuel stabilizer, say 3 parts 2-stroke to 1 part fuel stabilizer, into a bottle, and we would put a little bit of that into the fuel separator on the engine.
Okay, yeah.
And that solution gets run through the engine. Now you can do that in 2 places. You can do that while the boat is still in the water at, say, a customer slip, or at the marina, whichever.
Yeah.
Or it gets done here on
So
land
you
like this.
obviously want to run this.
Yes.
Get the stabilizer through the engine. What's it do? Lubes all the rubber grommets and...
It does 2 things. The engine oil that we put in, or the 2-stroke oil that's in there, actually lubricates the cylinder walls.
Yeah.
Prevents the thing from seizing up over the winter. And the fuel stabilizer that's in there actually goes through the injectors, through the fuel lines, and keeps everything from going stale or stagnant over the 6 months or longer period that you have that boat being stored.
I notice a lot of places you go to, hardware stores and the such, they've got plumbing antifreeze there. It's $1.99, $2.99 for 4 liters. But I'm noticing there's a flammable symbol on it. Is that recommended use in a boat?
I certainly wouldn't if I was you, no.
Okay.
You don't want, as soon as we have a boat like this, we try to keep everything flash-proofed or in a position where you can't catch fire.
Yeah.
So I would certainly not recommend any kind of antifreeze that is flammable. We want to keep it to usually using a propylene-based glycol to -50 or -100, depending on where you are in Ontario.
Mercury's got some great stuff. The
Yes.
pink and the blue. The blue's -100. So,
right. Good stuff.
You don't have to worry about
the other thing that happens a lot too, if you get the cheap stuff, is it will actually crystallize. And
turn to slush.
Not really. No, it actually forms crystals.
Crystals.
And when you get crystals like that, it'll plug up all sorts of different things: water taps, AC pumps, all sorts of different things. If you're using the cheap stuff. So we want to get to, like you said, to a better quality antifreeze. You don't get the crystallization, and it actually flushes out very, very cleanly when you're done.
So why don't we start this up and we can show the viewers exactly what happens.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we've just run that engine with some antifreeze. This is the single point drain cap here. If I crack this open, you'll see all the antifreeze coming out from the bottom hose down there. And that's draining these manifolds here and both sides of the engine block all into one pipe down here. All that antifreeze is going to come out down here. We drain that out, we catch it in a bucket, reuse it, and we're done. So this is a Mercury water separating fuel filter. Normally these are mounted on usually the right-hand side, depending on what type of engine you have. And when I was talking earlier about the solution that we would add, this, when you unscrew it from the engine, would typically be full of fuel. And we would simply remove just a small amount from the top of that filter, dump out a little bit, and you would take that solution and add a little bit into the top of this filter. When you screw that back on, that solution is being pulled from this filter through the injectors, through the rest of the fuel system into the boat, being burned and exhausted.
And the good thing about it is they're obviously all mounted upright, so that when you take that off, you don't have to worry about it. They're
Correct.
not mounted this way, so when you take it off, the fuel comes out, right?
No.
So from a fuel point of view in some of these small boats, right, you'd obviously put fuel stabilizer.
Absolutely, put
Right.
fuel stabilizer in it. Now, there's a lot of conspiracy now between whether to leave the tank full or leave the tank empty. right?
Yeah.
The way I look at it is if you were to actually Google some of this information, fuel actually has a shelf life of 30 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anywhere over 30 days, it starts to lose its octane rating. It starts to break down and go stale, stagnant.
Absolutely.
Right. So, being that we're putting
Turn into
boats up,
Varsol as
right,
much as
varnish, etc.
exactly.
Yeah. Being the fact that we're laying these up for 6 months, possibly even more, possibly less.
Yeah.
I always tell people empty tanks. Empty tanks. And the reason I say that, a lot of people are worried about condensation. But if you actually read this right on the canister, right on the box here, it says water separating fuel filter.
Yeah.
So if you get any kind of condensation in that tank or in the boat, this thing's going to pick it up, right?
And there's audibles on most of this. No matter what engine manufacturer, there's an audible on the system that
Correct.
There's a detector in this system that says there's water. You got water in your fuel. So,
Right.
and I mean, to get rid of that water, I know when it's not something from a winterization, but from just a general maintenance point of view, if that audible goes off and it says, it's very simple just to turn this off,
Yep.
dump this out, right,
Yep.
into a clear, water jug or whatever, and you can look at that and see, everybody says the amoebas, but you get you get where you get water and fuel don't mix, and you can see the bottom of it, right?
Correct. Water is always heaver than fuel.
Yeah.
So when you
it's
pour
gonna be
that
at the
into a
bottom.
container, you'll see it separate.
Everybody
if you have
looks-
water in your tank, you'll see water at the bottom and then fuel on top of that.
So what about the lower unit? Is there anything we need to do? You've been out in the lake, you've been running your boat hard all season. Should you be changing the gear oil, or at least checking to make sure there's no water?
Absolutely.
I know the drain screws have magnets on them, so you can also check to see if there's any metal filings on them.
For
to
sure.
See if something's happened over the season, right?
Absolutely. Would definitely recommend a drive service for anybody who's putting on at least 50 hours or more in a season. And you would pull that drive off. You would see if there's any water inside this bell housing here.
Yeah, absolutely. See if the bell housings or the
Right.
bellows is cracked or.
Yep. You're going to look at all the rubber components on the inside of that gimbal ring. You'll see if there's any damage. See your trim pucks here.
Yeah.
You're going to have all these water tubes and
Yeah.
U-joint bellows on the inside of this piece here. This is what we call a bell housing. And then when you take that drive off of there, if the drive has any issues as far as gear oil or seal integrity of any kind, that'll all be visible on the inside of that drive. So there's a lot of things you can really look at the drive and be able to tell what kind of service and things you should do or shouldn't do. For instance, when we look at this one, we can see all the paint is pretty fresh. You can see your anodes here are in really good shape. They look brand new.
Yeah.
There's nothing visual about that states, I could potentially have a problem.
Excessive use or.
However, if you get ones that come in and you're missing caps, the props dinged up, your anodes are either missing and or gone, be a good thing at that point to pull that drive off, have a good service, look inside, check your bellows, check your gear oil, etc., etc., etc. Basic rule of thumb, I would tell people that once a year you should be changing the drive oil.
Yeah.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we got the engine done, we've done the drive, this boat at some point is going to get shrink wrapped. So inside, there's a rag here. It's obviously from you guys making sure that you're not getting in there with dirty feet.
Of course.
But I always say to customers, make sure you get your life jackets out of there. There's no towels in the boat. Really honestly take all your stuff out. What they do here and at all the Pride locations is when you put your ridge pole up on these boats, if you've left your life jackets or anything else, they hang it up. So that it's not in the lockers, it's not, there's not condensation building on it, there's no, water underneath the life jacket, wet life jacket, you're out skiing, you threw it in the rod locker at the end of the season and left it there, right? Sure as heck it's going to get moldy by the time you get the boat out in the spring, right?
No question.
Yeah.
Mold is one of our biggest problems, obviously, especially in the marine world, right? So we want to take every precaution we can to make sure that doesn't happen. Same thing with canvas, right? When you take canvas off, we don't want to roll that up anywhere. We want to have it laid out as flat as we can make it. Try and keep the mold and the moisture off of that.
So also with the shrink wrap, they put a lot of times they put no damp in, and also put some vents in the shrink wrap as well.
Absolutely.
To let airflow go through there.
Right.
Right. I noticed and talked to some of our customers here that store in our covered slips. They don't shrink wrap, and they never have an issue with mold because the boat's not exposed to the elements, but it's in the air, right? They're not airtight. right? At least the air gets flowing through them, and you know I've never heard any complaints about mold in a boat that's covered.
You know, outside of that, the only other thing we would make sure is obviously that your batteries are disconnected. We want to we want to make 110% sure that when we put it in the water in the springtime, the customer comes up, that he can just simply put the key in the ignition, start it up, and go.
The good thing is though, you make sure they're charged when you put it away.
Absolutely.
And disconnected, then you don't have to worry about trickle charging them all winter.
Yep.
They'll stay
You're going to
charged,
get in there and
right?
you're going to check your hydrometer. You're going to take that and you're going to go in and you're going to test your battery strength and make sure that everything's where it should be. And that they're full.
Yeah. So there's an outboard. We got a Robalo inside with a Verado on the back of it. Let's go inside and you can just give me a going over what we do with an outboard, maybe something different than
compared
what we
to
do
this.
With an IO.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. Let's go.
Let's go check it out.
Okay.
So here's the Robalo I was talking about, and the outboard I was talking about. Mm-hmm. So as I can see, the lower unit's attached to the block, obviously, versus what we were just looking at with an IO, where it's on the stern of the boat, but it's mounted through the stern.
Right. The only difference, like I said, was the one we were just on has a horizontal engine sitting in the boat with a drive mounted to the back of it, whereas this is a one-piece unit where you have an engine at the top, a power head at the top, running vertically with a lower drive unit on the bottom.
Cool.
Principle's exactly the same. There's really not much in the way in terms of difference. Let's pop this off of here. Oil dipstick, just like your car or the stern drive that we were just on. Everything else is virtually the same, except this is running, your pistons and everything are running vertically. Or pistons are running horizontally, but the block is mounted vertically on a straight shaft down to the lower drive.
Okay.
The lower drive unit is conventionally exactly the same. You have a drain plug or a vent at the top, and you have a drain plug at the bottom here. So you pull the plug here to drain the gear oil out, fill it back up from the bottom, cap it off, put the plugs back in, new seals, and it's done same as the other one. Draining the block oil out would come out through here. You would loosen this off. You'd catch that with a bucket. Yeah. And that would take all the engine oil out of the block. New filter. Put the plug back in, fill it back up, and you're done. You're doing an oil change. Now, winterization.
So from fuel filter, I know from my experience with outboards, there's two small fuel filters inline in the fuel system.
Correct.
One coming out of the tank and then one going into the fuel rail. And there's also a water separator, much like we've seen on the engine and the other one, mounted inside externally in the boat. And obviously you can do the same thing with that. Spin the filter off, put a little bit of that premix in there, put it back on, run the engine.
Through the system.
Right?
Yeah.
The good thing about these, obviously, is because of the mounted the way they are, the water virtually drains out of the engine.
Correct. You're still going to run. You're still going to have potentially. You can still have some cavities.
Absolutely. So you would still have to do
You're still going to have some cavities in that engine block that could hold water. So it's always a good idea to put the muffs back on and flush the system with antifreeze as well. But as you stated, once we take the muffs off of there, the thing is self-draining, and it will take most of that out of there. Now those cavities or those pockets that would normally hold water are now holding antifreeze. So you've eliminated that as far as a potential problem.
Yeah.
The other difference here, obviously, is that you have the accessibility to reach just about everything.
Exactly.
Unlike the stern drive enclosed.
Yeah, you're standing on your head trying to do stuff. This is right on the back of the boat, and you can get it done fairly simple.
This takes the acrobatics out of marine work.
Exactly.
And, the contortion.
Much as guys don't like to work on outboards, right? They're kind of simple when they're right here. You get at them, you don't need that. Right?
All right, small advantage.
So you have very simple application. Something from 8 feet to 20 feet. I mean, and I know they put 3 or 4 of them on, 50-foot offshores and stuff like that. But I mean, it's simple application, very, very simple.
Very basic system. There's not much to
45 minutes, you could have it all done.
Correct. Yeah.
You'd still have to do your fuel stabilizer in the tank.
In the tanks,
and that sort of stuff. I mean,
still going to have to go in, disconnect your batteries, check your levels, have them charged, have them disconnected at the end of the day.
So every boat's got a battery, every boat's got a fuel tank. So you still, no matter what you're doing, you still need to do those.
There are some things that are very similar between both the stern drive and this application. It gets a little bit more complicated when we start to get into the bigger boats, which I believe we're going to go to next.
Absolutely, we'll go and see, and then there's a whole host of things that you wouldn't see anywhere else but on those boats. So.
Right.
All right, and saying that, maybe we should head out to the dock and
Venture on and go see one of those?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's put her back
Throw
together.
that cowling back on there, and we'll. It's not normally a two-man job, just Greg's weak today.
It's not on at the front, but just leave it there.
Okay. Cool.
We'll close that
All right,
up
let's
there.
go check that other boat out
Okay.
then. So the boats just keep getting bigger and bigger. I'm assuming this is the boat we're going to head on.
This is it.
Bob Cake's Carver, 50-footer. Steps to get up to the boat. So we're up on the bridge of this boat, and I'm seeing as I'm coming up here, I noticed there was AC vent there. There's a sink, a fridge, an ice maker. Obviously, a water system on this boat is something way bigger than we've seen up till now. And it's obviously going to take some more care to winterize this boat than some of the boats we've been looking at.
Absolutely. A lot more systems on a boat this size than in comparison to what we have seen. As you mentioned, you have AC, several AC systems. You have ice makers, you have fridges, you have sinks, 3 toilets, washdown pumps. There's just a whole boatload of systems on here that we would have to look at a lot more so than what we've seen up to
There's
this
stuff
point.
on the inside, but also, washdown pumps in front. There's probably a washdown on the bow as well as on the stern, maybe an external shower on the stern.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, stuff that you got to look at on the outside of the boat as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was just, thinking, we've been around the Southern Georgian Bay, Trent Severn area this year, and I'm seeing there's a photocopier here and a laser printer, and these people seem to be doing much more than just using them as boats nowadays, right?
Absolutely.
So
what a lifestyle to live.
Oh, absolutely, right? So where do you want to start? You want to...
Well, you know what? I think we'll let's take a look in the bilge. We'll go through some of the systems there,
Awesome.
and then we'll work our way up from there. We'll walk around the outside of the boat and get an idea of what other things we need to look at.
And as ironic as this is, the little boat we looked at earlier, it was hard to get in and see the engine. You can pretty much stand up in the bilge in this boat, right?
There's a lot more space down there. It's like an
right.
extra set of living quarters
Exactly.
for
Well, let's
people
go-
that are in the doghouse.
Exactly. Let's go check that out. Stairs and stairs and stairs. All right, going into the salon. I don't see any engines, Greg. Where would the engines be?
You're standing on them.
I'm standing on them. All
You're
right.
standing on them. They are actually right here.
Underneath the stairs.
Pull the stairs up here.
Awesome.
You'll have a
More stairs to get down there. Mm-hmm. Right.
well, very first thing we're going to do is we would empty out whatever water was in the existing tank inside the boat. So the boat tank itself, if it has 3/4, half full, whichever it is, we would simply turn on the water pump and drain whatever's in there outside. Once the tank is empty and the lines are fairly empty, then we would actually apply propylene glycol mix or the plumbing antifreeze to the system. And we would flush it through all the lines, which includes, the heads, ice makers, all the sinks, washdown pumps, transom showers, windshield washer, wipers. There's a whole bucket list of things that we would have to run through. Now, most of those systems run through this manifold here. So if you see on the manifold, most of these boats would have a hot side and a cold side.
Yeah.
Right? And most of them are labeled, so it would tell you exactly which one does what. So you have a washer, dryer, galley, wet bar, guest sink, dishwasher. There's just about everything that's on this boat in terms of accessories or options are all labeled on this manifold. Pull this up here. So you have a water pump right here.
Yep.
And this one here will pull water in from the lake through a strainer, same as what we were looking at before.
Okay.
Filters that water before it comes in here. Rubber impeller will actually push the water through this engine, cool it, and then dump it out the exhaust, either underwater or above water. All your diesel engines and your generators in this particular application are all closed cooled. So they use a heat exchanger system, and they fill that with an ethylene glycol based antifreeze, and then they freshwater cool that from seawater outside the boat that runs through that heat exchanger to keep the engine temperature down. So on this one, you'll see we have an overflow bottle here, or an expansion reservoir, and that one holds ethylene glycol from the engine. So as this engine gets hotter, this level will increase. Okay, so here we have one of the strainer systems we were talking about earlier. This is actually from the salon air conditioning unit, or air conditioning pump. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to close off one of these ball valves here. Okay, and I close this ball valve down. That shuts the water off into this strainer. So when I open this up, the only water coming out of here is going to be from the pump, from the lines, or from this hose, and it should diminish rather quickly. Hopefully. Okay, so you can pull the tap off of this guy, and this is your strainer. This is your filter housing that's in here. So any of the fine weeds that actually get through that clamshell would come into this little guy here. So if I tip this up, you'll see I've got some weeds that are in here. This is a very, very fine amount. It's not going to restrict anything or cause any problems for this system, but that's the kind of thing that you would normally clean every so often, depending on where you're boating. If you're in an area where there's it's very, very shallow and you get a lot of weeds, you might want to clean these a little bit more often. If they get packed up too full with some of this stuff, then the actual impeller in the AC pump or in the generator, for instance, not necessarily these because they're a bronze impeller type, but in the generator here, they're rubber. And the rubber ones don't like to pull this kind of stuff through them, and they will actually get hot, and when they get hot, they burn out.
Cool. So we're done down there. Now we're up in the salon.
Yeah.
So what do we need to know about up here?
Well, what we're going to do mainly through the rest of the salon, through the VIP staterooms, the master staterooms, etc. There's a lot of water system stuff that we're going to go through. On a boat of this size, you're going to have a lot of different features such as dishwashers, washer dryers, several different taps, toilets, etc., etc. And of course, all of these run fresh water from the lake. So what we're going to do, obviously, when we're downstairs and we were discussing the water pump and the manifold system that's there,
absolutely,
we're going to, what I would do is I would come in and I would pressurize that water pump right from the water pump itself. And then from that point, it's actually feeding through that manifold and every other tap through this boat.
With the glycol itself.
With the glycol. So once I get the line on there and I pressurize it from an external source, say like a drum outside full of propylene glycol, I would come in, I would turn it on. And then instead of having water come out of here, it's going to be all propylene glycol. Perfect. So when we have that pressurized, as soon as I turn the tap on, it's going to be standard water or seawater like this or fresh water. And then after a few seconds, it's going to start to turn pink. It's going to start burping, farting. And once it comes out solid pink, I know that that system is winterized. And then I would turn it over to the other side, to the hot water side. And of course, we've drained the hot water tank already. We have it crossed. So now it's going to do the same thing. It's going to go back to fresh water. After a few seconds, it'll start puking out pink. Okay, so here we are in one of the VIP staterooms. And you'll see you have a washer and a dryer here. So the process with this one, most of them work the exact same way. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to turn it on. We have to make sure that we're either on generator power or we're on dockside power. Once we have power into the washer dryer, you're simply going to turn it to one of the cycles. It really doesn't matter which one. And you're going to wait for it to turn on. When it turns on, you're going to try and select the warm setting, so you get a mix of hot and cold.
Water.
And then that's going to start to fill that drum with the water that we now have as propylene glycol. So it's going to start to bring some propylene glycol in there. Once we can see it coming in, that's all pink. You're going to turn the power off, and you're going to flip this back over to the end of the cycle, where it usually comes to drain. And then you're going to turn the power button back on. When you do that, obviously, it's going to open that drain valve at the bottom of the washer and suck out whatever propylene glycol is in there, drain the rest of the drum out. When the drum is empty, turn the power off, you're done with the washer and dryer.
Cool.
Okay?
We're outside. It's getting even hotter out here. I can't believe we're talking about winterizing still. So there is an external shower and wash down in the back of the boat.
Yeah, we have that here. You'll see there's a transom shower here. So this is on the freshwater side of the system. on the boat runs from the onboard freshwater tank. So this one, again, same thing, pressurized with non-tox.
So, but you don't have to pressurize that separately. You could do that while you're running the rest of the systems off.
This
right?
would be inclusive of all the taps and
Okay.
the toilets on the boat, as well as the sinks,
Awesome.
ice maker, et cetera, et cetera. This one, again, same thing, pretty simple. Cold side, you're going to turn that on until we get pink coming out of here. You shut that off and do the same thing with the hot. What frequently happens here that does cause some issues is when I do turn the cold side on, and you'll see this come out water, and it'll take 5 or 10 seconds to actually start coming pink.
Yeah.
When it does come pink, people turn this off, and then they turn the other one on, and immediately this one is still pink, and they go, "Oh, it's done," and they turn it off.
Yeah, turn it off.
You haven't given it enough time to
run
actually
the water
get
out of it from the hot water side. Okay.
Exactly. So you want to make sure you give it at least 10, 15 seconds, make sure it's good and pink on both sides. Turn the system off. That one's done. Okay. Also in this cabinet, you'll see there's a rear water washdown. So you have a tap here.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is again, this is going to be your rear water washdown. So the same thing occurs. You're going to turn this on. This is again on a separate pump. So we have to make sure that we keep that in mind.
Yep.
You do 2 separate pumps. You can turn that one on again until it comes out pink.
Awesome.
And then that's done.
So and that's pretty much it.
That's pretty much it.
You've gone from outboard to IO to 50-foot carver, and pretty much done every system known to man on a boat, right? Ice makers, toilets, dishwashers, washing machines,
Air conditioning.
Air conditioning. So, you know, I'm confident that this boat, when it's done, it'll be complete, and then the customer will be happy in the spring that he's got no issues.